I thank the grace of Heavenly Mother, compassion of Maitreya Buddha, and virtue of Sijun Simu, also Senior Master and Junior Master Lee, for giving me this opportunity to host this class. So today we are going to work on chapter 7. But before we start on chapter 7, I want to go over with you a very important website that many of you maybe don't know. And this website was referred by Robert, who is a participant here today. He showed me this website a couple of weeks ago. So this website contains more than 200 translations. So here we are not going to talk about which translation is the best, but I want to go over with you what the top banner is about. So when you open this website, you will see the banner looks like this. So some of you are familiar with Wang Bi, the name. And then He Sang Gong, and here is another one, Fu Yi. And down in the bottom is Ma Wang Dui A, Ma Wang Dui B, and then here is Guo Dian Lao Zi. So I want to explain to you what this is about. Start from Ma Wang Dui A and B. The reason there's A and B is because it's from the tomb A and tomb B. Lao Tzu's scripture was discovered from the tomb, and the tomb happens to be 186 BC. It was during that time in that Han Dynasty. And so there's different tomb. And even on this one, it's even older, 470 BC. This is from the Chu Dynasty. In Chinese, it's called Chu Guo. So it's from the Chu Dynasty. So this one is more older than Ma Wang Dui. So if you click the link here, you will see a lot of things missing. The reason there's a lot of things missing is because the scripture was missing. Here, I want to show you an example. This is kind of like a Bible scripture that we discovered too. There's something missing here. So that's why when you look at Ma Wang Dui's link, there's a lot of square that represent the missing link. And same thing for this one, Guo Dian. This one, there's a lot of thing missing too, but not as much as this one. But anyway, here we know this is 470 BC, and you can see the bamboo is being formatted this way. So this one, it seems like it represents how the literature or how the article were recorded 2,000 years ago. So that's why when you click these three links, they are missing text. So by looking at this 6 link here, you can see that this is the oldest one, and this one next, and then next this one, and this one, and this is the recent one. So earlier, some people asked me, oh, He Sang Gong's version and Wang Bi's version and Fu Yi's version, which one do I follow? I want to say that their version are very similar. Well, first of all, they did not create a text. I want to give you a comparison what their text look like. Their text only have very few variation, and that very few variation, it's only exists in punctuation and very rare in the text. So here on the first line, we can see here's a comma, period, and comma. And on here, you can see that there's a comma here. And on this written by Wang Bi, there is no comma, so it's just a whole line without a comma. And then Fu Yi's version has a comma. The same thing happened right here. Their text is very similar. The punctuation would not make any difference. Even on this one, this character here, for those who does not know Chinese, you can see from the image of the text, this word and this word are different. But even though they are different, they mean the same thing. Therefore, it doesn't matter which version we use. But what it matters is the annotation. So to give you an example, this is the annotation from He Sang Gong, and this is the annotation from Wang Bi. So let's start from He Sang Gong. From He Sang Gong's annotation, He start with the first three character, and then he give his annotation, and then another three character, he give another annotation. So it's, you can see 3, 3, 3, 3, and then he break it down in a very detailed way. But when you look at Wang Bi's version, he basically group everybody together, the first 12 character together, and then it gives the annotation. Same thing for the next verse too. So Wang Bi's annotation, it's more cluster. And then He Gong's version, it's more separate into different phrase. And then he give a annotation in between. So some people ask me, which version do I use? I would say none of this, because all this annotation is written in very ancient Chinese, even I cannot understand. So what I use is, you cannot see in the book. What I use is this book. Anyway, this thick book is written by a Tao master. It's about 2-inch thick. Before I give a class on Tao Te Ching, I study in a textbook, and I also listen to various video from Tao master only. I don't listen from the English translation. So whatever you see in the class today, it's a combination of wisdom from different Tao masters, specifically from the I-Kuan Tao master. So that's my brief summary of this website here. The website, it has a different link. So this is the little background of it. Now let's begin chapter 7. Chapter 7, the title is Selflessness. So chapter 7 is a continuation of chapter 6. In chapter 6, we talk about the spirit of valley never die. When we look at this, people tend to focus on themselves because the spirit of valley never dies, and they are most likely to refer the spirit of valley as themselves, because here it mentions the door to a mysterious female. So it's our ultimate goal to connect ourselves to heaven. So Lao Tzu wants us to expand from our individual version, from our self point of view, because Tao is supposed to be manifest momentary on daily basis in our daily life. We want to expand to other people, to the people in the community, to the people in the society. So chapter 7 is from Lao Tzu's wisdom to remind us to expand our individual circle to a more bigger perspective. So here is the text for chapter 7. Chapter 7, it can be divided into two sections. Here is the introduction section, and then here is the body. So Lao Tzu really want to talk about the saint. It's just like when we write a paragraph, always have to have an introduction paragraph. So this is Lao Tzu's introduction paragraph. He talks about heaven and earth because this is a good analogy that he liked to use. As we know in the previous chapter, he used different analogy. He used, what did he use? The bellow, and then he used the analogy of cup on a room. So heaven and earth is another analogy that he used in this chapter. Heaven is long and earth is enduring. In other words, heaven and earth are long-lasting. So Lao Tzu used heaven and earth as a metaphor. Heaven and earth, it's something that all a human can observe. I mean, below each human, there's earth. Above each human, there is heaven. And in our lifetime, we do a lot of praying, as we can see that in the ancient holy temple being built around the globe. There is the Greek temple, and then there is the Egyptian temple or the Egyptian tomb, and this temple is in India. So when they build a temple, they want to build as high as they can because they want to be more close to heaven or be more close to God. Throughout the ancient history, human is already used to heaven, and during our difficult time, humans tend to pray to heaven. And then we beg for heaven for help if there is any hardship or struggle. So heaven and earth provide many beneficial things to humans. They provide a perfect environment for all the sentient being, for all the living being. Heaven is kind. Heaven provide the four seasons for us. The sun is very benevolent. Sun provides sunshine to all the humankind. He does the work tirelessly and regularly without stop. Oh, here I want to share with you a story. It's like a funny story. There are two men. These two men, they are good friends. They belong to this baseball team. One person is a catcher. The other person is a pitcher. So they being on and off many baseball game, and they are great friends. And they promise to each other, if one of them die, the person who died would have to come back to the earth or find a way to tell the person who is still alive to see if there is a baseball field in heaven so that they can continue their playing. Being a baseball lover, they want to do it on earth and they want to continue their fun in heaven. That was their promise to each other. So one day, the catcher died of car accident, but the pitcher did not know. So the catcher want to find a way to tell the pitcher who is still alive. He went into the pitcher's dream and he say, hey, so-and-so, I'm already in heaven. So the pitcher say, oh, I'm sorry, you're already in heaven. But the catcher say, keep in mind, the catcher already died. He's already in heaven. So the catcher say, well, I want to tell you a great news. And then the pitcher say, what is the great news? So the catcher say, well, I'm already in heaven. Let me tell you, there is baseball field in heaven. And the pitcher was so thrilled. He was so happy. And both of them cheer. And but then the catcher said, oh, even though there's a good news, but here's the sad part. The pitcher said, what is the sad part? Tell me. So the catcher said, well, although there's a baseball field in heaven, but you are going to pitch tonight, meaning that somebody's going to die tonight so that they can play together. So that was a little funny joke. There is a lot of heavenly story on the internet, and also there's a lot of movie made out of heaven too. So why does heaven and earth last long? To ask this question, it's the same thing as to ask, what does heaven and earth live for? So the answer is heaven and earth, they live for all the sentient beings. Because without this purpose, they would have stopped. Without this purpose, they would have discontinued. They are operating and continuously in a way to care and nurture all the sentient being. That's why they have to do it every day, 24 hours a day, 24/7 for many years. So their purpose is to continue operate to nourish all the sentient being in all the planets, especially on the planet Earth. So knowing why the heaven and earth last long, we know that they last long because they are operating in the principle of Tao. They are not selfish. So the question that we should ask ourselves is that, who are we living for? Some people are living for themselves. So if they are living for themselves, then that timeline, it's only, say, nowadays, it's only like 100 years, plus minus 20 years. So that's for self. That's a very narrow perspective. So if we can extend a little bit, some people live for their children. But what if your children misbehave? We provide so much love and compassion for our children. We feed them, we care for them, we send them to school, we pay for their college, and we are hoping one day they will be independent and maybe they will give us some kind of allowance. But what if the children does not turn out the way that we expected? What if the children does not fulfill the parents' goal? Then what are you going to do? And there are some people, they live for their spouse. And what if the spouse betray them? And then there are people who live for their loved one. We can see a lot of sad news happen in our society. There are two loving couple, say boyfriend and girlfriend, and then something goes wrong with the girl. She ended up liking another man, and then this boyfriend will do whatever he can to gain her love. Therefore, he will do something really, really stupid. The most famous story that I can think of is Romeo and Juliet, right? One person dies, so the other person cannot find a reason to live anymore. So the other person also commits suicide too. If we live for the money, of course, we know that it doesn't work because money, it's only temporary. And there are some very dedicated profession, very dedicated teacher who love their job. They are living for their students. Here, I want to share with you an example. In 1992, May 15, that was 29 years ago. It's a story happened in Taiwan. There was a teacher. She loved the kids so much. It was her dream to be a kindergarten teacher. So one day she was taking the kids out on a field trip. And this field trip has 53 participants. Here I have the number 53. So 53 here. It's a commercial bus, carry 53 people. So for some reason, there were fire coming from the driver's side. Later on, people realized that it was the driver who was smoking. After he smoked, he did not put it in the proper place. He put it under his chair. But underneath his chair, there was spray paints that his boss told him to do the spray paint for the vehicle, but he did not put it outside. He put it underneath his seat. And we know that the spray paint is highly flammable. It's extremely dangerous. Everything that can go wrong, it went wrong here. So when the seat caught on fire, he stopped the vehicle, he jumped, he tried to open the back door, but the back door was locked and it was being occupied with a lot of junk. And then another door cannot be opened. So there was only one door of exit. And here I want to mention in this incident, there was one teacher. Her name is Lin Jingjian. On this tour bus, there were 3 teachers and then 2 parents, total 23 deaths. But during this time, because she loved her kids so much, she loved her student. She wants to save her student. Some kids already went out, but most of kids, they don't know what to do. They were just sitting on the chair crying. So then she take the kids out one by one. And then in the end, she saw the fire was so big, but then she still hear the kids crying. She went back 9 times. But in the last few times, she couldn't go out anymore because the door here was full of flame. So then she ended up throwing the kids out of the window. In that fire, there were some bystander. They tried to help the kids too, to create another window, like an exit for the kids. So they bang on the window, so some few window was open. So the teacher throw the kids out one by one, and there were 9 kids being saved. But in the end, she was being pushed to the end of the bus. So by the time the fire goes to the back of the bus, most people already died. And then when the firefighter came, by the time they extinguished the fire, they realized that this teacher was holding together with 4 students, 2 students on the right side and 2 students on the left side in her arm. And so this is a horrific incident. She died for those kids. She died for those students. So who is she living for? She's living for the students, definitely not for herself. So this is a picture that was after burn from the fire. As you can see, it's only skeleton. So after hearing the story, we must ask ourselves, who are we living for? By the time when we take our last breath, our soul bear the ultimate responsibility of what our physical body did in our lifetime, whether it's good deed, karma, we carry all the burdens. So how can we live eternally? Lao Tzu already give us an answer. In order to live eternally, we have to be like heaven and earth. We have to be like heaven and earth. In the previous chapter, we talk about Bardo. Bardo is the intermediate state between two lives on earth. It's after death and before the next birth. So during this travel time, we must walk alone. Nobody can walk with us. During this time, who is with us? It's only our karma, our merit are with us. And so if we can manifest our Tao, manifest our halo during our lifetime, that will be great. So how can we build our halo to a bigger one? Same like Jesus, same like Shakyamuni Buddha. It's to follow the footsteps of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth, they rotate based on Tao. So the reason heaven and earth can endure long is that they do not live for themselves. Hence, they are able to long live. So everything that manifests in this physical realm have to follow the cycle. There's a creation, growing phase, harvest, and destruction. And each sentient being go through the four seasons too. So heaven and earth are not selfish because they provide this four season for us. They provide morning and evening for us and the nighttime. There are some sentient beings such as insects. They live in the morning, but they die in the evening. So this is what the heaven and earth provide for them. They don't compete with the sentient being. So they want all the sentient beings to grow. Therefore, they can continue operate based on their principle. But because the sentient being continue to procreate, so they carry this duty to continue to operate. That's why they can endure long, because they do not live for themselves. So when we read this verse, we have to ask ourselves, who are we living for and what is our purpose? Are we living for Tao since we have studied Tao Te Ching? So some of us are living for the continuation of the sacred heritage. Some of us are helping Lao Tzu, Confucius, Shakyamuni Buddha to spread the message or to spread the gospel. So all this are great purpose. Tao cannot speak, therefore we have to live. We have to use our physical body to manifest the Tao within us. And because Tao does not perish, so we will long live. Do you see the analogy here? The heaven and earth, they are living for the sentient being, therefore they will not perish. So us, if we are living for the continuation of the Tao heritage, then we will long live. This is like asking ourselves to live in our life every day to fulfill ourselves. Here, I have a footprint here. Have you ever go down to the beach and then you try to put a footprint on the same beach? Is each of our footprint stable and very clear so that we can live for the people beyond us? In other words, do you have any junior who is following you? Are you guiding anybody? Are you doing some holy mission? Are you living for something everlasting? Definitely, we are not living for money. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Are you living for your children? And hopefully, your children, it will be continue your heritage. So here, very important, I want to emphasize on holy mission. In our Tao temple, we stress very much on holy mission. To give you an example is that in our temple, we host a different holy mission to bring people on board. We host a vegetarian cooking class. We hope that during this engagement, we can teach them about Tao. We host different meetup programs such as this so that we can share with them our Tao Te Ching knowledge. And then we share with them our Tao knowledge from the ancient saints and sages. So the meaning of our life is determined by who are you living for. Have you ever been to a funeral? So the best way to test ourselves is that imagine one day we pass. in our funeral? Will people say something good about us, or will they not make any comment at all? Will our life be remembered? Will our life be cherished? Some people's life is full of, I wouldn't say trash. Like they do very evil thing to the society. They scam and they commit fraud, and then, or perhaps they are serial murders. So when these people die, we will cherish for their their passing, because this person no longer does harm to the society. We will never want to be in that kind of situation. We want to fulfill our lives so that the future generation can continue remember us, not remember our name, but remember the virtue that we leave behind. Of course, there are many heroic stories from YouTube that you can look at. So here I want to share with you a story. Who are you living for? So who are you living for depends on where is your value. Here is a story of an old man. He is about to die. He tells his son is just a teenager. He said, I'm about to die. I have this old watch, which is 200 years old. I want you to sell it in a swap meet and see how much you can get. So his son followed him and he went to the swap meet, and a mother and the kids come by. So the mother and the kids come by and the kids saw it. The mother said, hey, I can buy this, it can be your toy. So the mother offered $20. So the teenager went back to tell his father, I was offered $20. So the father said, well, what about you go to a pawn shop? So the pawn shop offered him $2,300. So then the old sick father tell him, well, can you try the museum? So he was reluctant, but he still followed his father's words. So the museum gave him a quote, $200,000. And then when the museum officer gave him this quote, the pawn shop owner was there too. So then they start the bidding process and ended up as high as $500,000. So the story tells us that it depends on where we put ourselves. If we put ourselves in swap meet, it will have a different value. The value will be less. If we put ourselves in a museum, we will have a higher value. So it's important to see in our mind, understanding what does Lao Tzu's message is about. Lao Tzu wants us to find out, who are we living for? Are we living for Tao? Are we living for nurturing others? Are we living for spreading the Tao, the Dharma, or for the Tao environment? How we position ourselves is very important. The saint places himself last, yet he comes first. Positions himself extraneously, yet he's preserved. Because the saint understands the logic, so the saint wants to follow heaven and earth. Heaven and earth endure long. The saint also wants to do that too. Therefore, the saint does not live for themselves. The saint positions himself extraneously. That's why he's preserved. So he does not really value much on possession, not much on reputation, not much on success. Because like the common people in our society, they compete for authority or fame. But after experience the rise of reputation, eventually that reputation or the fame or the wealth will die down. Therefore, why not focus on something that lasts longer? Some of you read different version of Tao Te Ching, and in different version of Tao Te Ching, you will encounter the word. Sometimes they use saint, sometimes use sage. So in my translation, I like to use a saint because this is what Lao Tzu used. But here in this slide, I want to explain to you there's a difference between saint and sages, but they are very close in our level. Because for me, I don't know about you, I'm just in this level here, the second level above the common. And I'm sure most of you are from this level and above. But for me, I'm in this level, scholar level. So one has his own principle. One is loyal and sincere. When we say something, we will fulfill it. Our speech and behavior is appropriate. We don't admire wealth or money. And if we become poor, we will not be jealous of the rich. So this is what most of us is about. The next one is a 君子. It's a little a step higher than the scholar. So a lot of Tao Te Ching translation use this word or this word. And I will say that both of them are fine because they are really high level. So start from saint. Who are the saints? Saints are, say, Mother Teresa, Shakyamuni Buddha, Lao Tzu, Confucius, Jesus. Jesus is considered saint, and Mother Teresa. So being a saint, that means they can resonate with heaven and earth. Basically, they can communicate with heaven and earth because they are together as a unity with heaven and earth already. They will risk their life for all the sentient beings. So the difference between saints and sages, I will say, is the resonation of heaven and earth. So this category of humans, what Confucius say is not my interpretation. Confucius say in the Analect, he categorized human into 5 categories. So which one are you? The next one. So the saint plays himself last, yet he comes first. Position himself extraneously, yet he's preserved. This is the same verse as the previous one. So this verse echo with chapter 6. Chapter 6 talks about the spirit of valley never die. It is called the mysterious female. Isn't it the same thing? Here, the saint, his spirit is long lasting. Even though he's last, but he comes first. It's the same thing as the spirit of valley never die. Although the impermanent body already perished, but the spirit still continue live. So if we can understand this concept, then we will understand how to long live our spirit. Here I want to point out to you the saints and sages. So it doesn't matter what translation you look at. Throughout Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu mentioned saint many times. So when you look at this word saint, I want you to look at this word as he's talking to you because he is trying to teach the person who read the Tao Te Ching. So it's basically whoever is reading the book, and the person who read the book is a saint to be, a sage to be. And some of us are already so much in holy mission, and we do a lot of selfless work. So when you look at saint or sage, don't think about this picture here. Of course, these are saints and sages. Most of people will think about this. People are saint. It's very hard to reach. I can never be Jesus. I can never be Buddha. But Lao Tzu said, yes, you can. If you follow my prescription in 81 chapter, you will be able to be like them. So when it's referred to the saints and sages, think about it's Lao Tzu is talking to us. So that verse can be analyzed into this table here. This table is about impermanent versus permanent. So impermanent is something that can perish. The impermanent is the false self. The saint put himself last. He put his false body last. His body is only temporary. The thought of serving other, anyway, here is talking about the body and the mind. Here is talking about the spirit. Whatever he gained during this process, he wants to pass on to other people. Although it's a teamwork, but he never wants to claim on any credit. And because of all this, he does not regard the impermanent as important. Therefore, he achieved the permanent, which is his spirit. His true self will be long lasting. He achieved enlightenment, achieved awakening, and according to chapter 6, spirit of valley never die. His name will be always remembered. He will always be commemorated, and he will always be honored. I'm sorry, here I have a typo. So here is a table of impermanent versus permanent. So on that particular verse, it echoes with chapter 2. So when you study chapter 2, and if you put a square around this text here, you can see that this red box represents Tao and essence. So this is where the saint places himself last. He wants to be the last one in line. He wants to be low, so low that it becomes invisible. He wants to be the sound of the whispering that people cannot hear. And of course, staying in the back is always the last too. And because he wants to stay in the last, therefore he comes first. So he positions himself extraneously, yet he's preserved. The saint, he does many things, so many things complete. After he attain all virtue, after he forget all beings, after he devote all deeds and achieve all the success, he say, this has nothing to do with me. I don't want it. I don't want any possession. I don't want any recognition. I don't want any reputation. That has nothing to do with me. I don't want to dwell on success. So this part, it's really echo with chapter 6. I feel positioning himself extraneously that you can see from this red box here. So now let's move to the next one. Isn't it due to his selflessness? Therefore, such selflessness is realized. These last two verses are the most difficult one to interpret. I will explain to you why. So let me paraphrase the first line. The first line, it says, due to his selflessness, or because he's not selfish, therefore such selflessness is realized. This is what I paraphrase. But here comes the original text. Because if I would translate to the original text, it doesn't make sense. So this is what the original text says. Not that he's not selfish, thus his selfishness is fulfilled. So this is what the original text say, but we have to read between the lines. So right after you read the first one say he is selfish. So here's my note. We have to read between the line, okay? So he is selfish, but his selfishness is totally selfless. Therefore, his selfishness is fulfilled. Maybe some of you don't like this, but I will explain further. But here I want to explain to you in the double negative. Lao Tzu used na 2 times. So with double negative, it becomes positive. That's why it becomes the second line. He is selfish. So what Lao Tzu is saying is that the saints and sages, they are selfish. In other words, they are selfish, are not for themselves. Or we can say that they have their own agenda. Let me put it this way. I host this Tao Te Ching. It looks like I am doing selfless work, but I'm selfish too because I have my own agenda. And my selfish want is I want everybody to learn Tao Te Ching so that you can carry Tao with you. So this is my own agenda. So it sounds bad, but this is what Lao Tzu says in the original text. The saints and sages have their own agenda, but their agenda is selfless. So here is my note on his selfishness. So this is what they want personally from the saints and sages. They want to take on others' fault as oneself. Isn't it true that Jesus, he was crucified on the cross and he wanted to carry all the sins for all the humanity. This is a great example. That's Jesus' selfishness. By being crucified on the cross, he wants everybody, all the humanity to remember him, all the humanity to be awakened. He has his agenda. He wants to clean everybody's soul. And the saints also have other wants too. They want to pass the merit and virtue to others, don't they? And repent and observe oneself. They want to continue their cultivation. And at the same time, they want to have as much disciple as they can so that more people, more students, more followers can do the same work as him so that the saint can pass on the torch to the future generation. And of course, the saints want to teach the people the ethic and the morality. And lastly, to bring salvation to the humanity and all sentient beings. So this is what Lao Tzu wants us to know, that the saint has their own selfishness, but the selfishness is not for him, it's for others. So on the same verse, I have the same original text here. So this remind me that Lao Tzu like to use paradox. So paradox is that when you say something, you mean another things. The famous one that I know is the more you know, the less you understand. Here I have another one. The more laws and orders are made prominent, the more thieves and robbers there will be. What about failure lead to success? The more choice we have, the harder it will become to choose. And another one that I want to give it to you is that social media disconnect us from each other. So social media is supposed to connect us, but then the coming of social media distance from us between the society, between families, because instead of utilizing the social media, people tend to using text message, email. So there's face-to-face, impersonal connection. Therefore, social media, it's not really social media.
Same as chapter 5. Chapter 5 literally express heaven and earth are not human.
Do you remember? And the saints are not human. But Lao Tzu's message is heaven and earth are really human. They are most human. Because if they are not human, we will have nothing to eat. If the saints and sages are not human, then we will be like the common people going through life, wasting our life. Have you ever heard of a saying, you are really bad? Like we have a good friend and we tell our good friend, you are so bad. But when we say you are so bad, that means you are so good. So bad means good. So this is the message that Lao Tzu delivered for chapter 6. So keep in mind, as we go through 81 chapters, sometimes he used paradox. So here on the same verse, the first selflessness and the second selflessness, it has two different meaning. The first one, it's about his want, his dedication and devotion for the humanity. That's pretty easy to understand. On the second one, you have to read the context. The selflessness is realized. So this selflessness is realized. It's being fulfilled. So here I draw an arrow. So what is realized? He will eventually come first, and he will eventually preserve for a long time. And this realization is the unintended recognition from others. So his name will be realized. The highest honor will be given. He will be highly respected, and he will be always remembered. So this is a difference between this selflessness and the second one. So the first one and the second one have a different interpretation. So Lao Tzu encouraged us to practice selflessness. we can see from the previous verse. So why practice selflessness? We can look at it from two different perspectives. One is the invisible perspective, the other one is the visible perspective. Let's look at it from the invisible perspective. We are original pure consciousness. Our soul is invisible, or some people call our spirit is invisible. We come from emptiness, or we come from the heavenly mother. We come from this oneness, or come from the universe. Eventually we are going to return to this universe. Right now, our soul, although we feel we are separated from the universe, but we are together because we are in the micro miniature universe. I want to give you an example. Imagine we are a drop of water. Each one of us is a drop of water in the ocean. So can we identify, oh, this drop of water is mine, that drop of water is yours, oh, that drop is John, this drop is Mary, that drop is Kelvin, and this drop is Mark or Frank? No, we cannot, because everybody is together. But as soon as the weather becomes hot, the water evaporates, it goes to the air, and it's being condensed in the clouds, and then travel in the sky. And therefore the journey of water begin, or the journey of water moisture begin. But originally we come from this seed of ocean. So when there's a rain, eventually we will come down to the mountain, become ice, become rainfall, and then we will move down, we flow down in the water stream or river. Eventually we will go into the ocean, and then we will join the seed of ocean, and we are part of the universe again. So that was an analogy. So our invisible spirit, it cannot be separated from the big universe. In other words, it's the concept of oneness. Your spirit and my spirit, we were all together. That's how we can resonate with each other. And the next one is the visible part. So we can explain selflessness in the visible part. We all know that our physical body, or everything in this physical realm, is made out of 4 elements: the fire, earth, air, and water. Fire, we have a body temperature, and the earth represent our flesh,
Air represents our breath.
and water represent our blood. So our physical body is an aggregate of all these 4 elements. One day when we die, all these 4 elements will return to its place. Think about how long has Earth been existed. It's 4.54 billion years. So how many generations has it lived on Earth? And the natural gas. The natural gas come from the decomposed plants and animal matters. In other words, the vegetable that you eat today have to absorb the nutrient from the soil, and the soil is the deposit of animal or decomposed plants from the ancient time or from the recent time. Recently, I heard my daughter say that she studied history. She say in the old time, 200 years ago in America, there were some Indian tribes. And during their travel, if one of the tribe member gets sick, they cannot really stop the journey. They have to move on. So the sick one will have to just die alone, and the rest of the party move on. So the person who stay behind, who is sick, will eventually die, and the body will be decomposed. And that body will become the crude oil, will become part of the natural gas, will become the soil that we step on, that we use today. That tells you that one day when we die, our body will become the soil, will become the natural gas or the crude oil for the future generation to come, right? So if we look at selflessness, it's very important to consider these two aspects. It doesn't matter which aspect you look at, it's important to live selfless. It's important to live without self or selflessness. It's unfortunate nowadays, our society, most people focus their life on themselves. I think you and I experience a lot of scamming call. There's all kind of scam, romance scam, email scam, phone scam, social security scam, computer cyber scam, so much scam. So Lao Tzu wants us to focus on the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the picture of oneness, that all the sentient beings are together, not just our individual self. So here I want to explain Lao Tzu in this chapter use selfless. This word selfless is equivalent to the Buddha's term no self or non-self. It's the same. So here I have a quote that I copy and paste from the internet. What is non-self? It means the unchanging self, the permanent self, soul, or the essence in the phenomenon. In other words, it will never change. So here I want to go over with you Diamond Sutra 3, the Bodhisattva vow, because I think this resonates with our discussion today, selflessness. So I want you to focus on this part. Here is the Chinese text if you want to look. So Diamond Sutra is a conversation between Shakyamuni Buddha and Subhuti. Subhuti is one of top 10 disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha. Buddha tell Subhuti, I will liberate them, meaning all the sentient being, by leading them to Nirvana. I will liberate them by leading them to Nirvana. In other words, lead them to heaven without residue, without anything left. It means to lead them to Nirvana with emptiness, total emptiness, without desire, without karma, without seven emotion, without six desire, without sin, without karma. Lead them to the state of original pure consciousness, to their true selfless state. So here's the important part. When immeasurable, countless, infinite number of sentient beings have been liberated, in reality, no sentient being have been liberated. So why does he say that? Because all the sentient beings, they were not sentient beings. They come from emptiness. They come from Tao. The sentient being is not supposed to be sentient being. They are only sentient being, temporary. But they are only called sentient being because it's a temporary name. But their characteristic is not sentient being. In other words, they are only sentient being, temporary. So once they are being saved, then they should not call sentient being. So let me go on. Why is it so, Subhuti? If Bodhisattva obey in the notion of self, a person, a sentient being, or a lifespan, they were not Bodhisattva. So in Bodhisattva's mind, if he is still thinking about I am a self, you, they, he, animal, or vegetable, or all a sentient being, then they are not Bodhisattva. In other words, Bodhisattva does not differentiate what is you and me, because together we are one. So there's no such calling us sentient being. There's no calling us self. There's no calling us you and me, or they, we. There's no pronoun. Everybody is together. So if there is a Bodhisattva calling you or they or him or her, they are not Bodhisattva. So in other words, we are sentient being. My name is Joanna. There's other people here. There's Robert, there's Carolyn, there's a lot of participants here. Same like the Zoom session here. This Zoom session is only temporary. Pretty soon the Zoom session will be end. And then we will all go back to our life. And then if we look at the bigger perspective, one day when we take our last breath, we will all perish. We will not become a person. Some of you might become a saint or a sage, and a person with a name will be transmigrate to another person with a different name, transmigrate to another body with a different name. But regardless which body that we travel in, that we carry with, we are not supposed to have a name. Our soul and the spirit supposed to be in a unity. So this is what the scripture is about. Being a bodhisattva should not have a notion of self. This verse really echo with this chapter theme, selfless or no self. So when we talk about selflessness, I have to mention about Bible. Jesus, he demonstrated his selflessness throughout the Bible. He was crucified. That was the ultimate display of his selflessness. Jesus washed feet for his disciple. He was display his humanity and his servanthood and his selflessness. And this is a couple verse from the Bible, which I will not go over because most of you know already. And Confucius say, I cannot let people understand Tao. I think I should just get a small raft to travel overseas. So during Confucius' lifetime, what was his purpose? His purpose was almost like heaven and earth. He wants to spread Tao to the general public, but nobody can understand him. So he was very discouraged. He was very frustrated. He traveled to different country, but no one will accept him. So he was devastated. So during the travel, he suffered joblessness. In other words, unemployment. He was homeless, starvation, and many life-threatening violence. The next saint that I want to mention is Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. She made a great vow. She said, I'm going to save all sentient beings. If there's anyone not saved, I vow not to attain Buddhahood. Should I give up my vow with saving sentient beings, yet to save? My body was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Basically, she made a vow. She wants to save everybody. If there's still one sentient being left, she will not attain Buddhahood. So isn't that a great vow? This is the greatest display of selflessness. Here is another bodhisattva who demonstrates the selflessness in the great humanity. He made a great vow too. This is the most great compassionate vow. He is known as the bodhisattva in the hell realm. He said, if I do not go to hell to help the suffering being there, who else will go? I will not become a Buddha until the hell are empty. Only when all beings have been saved will I enter nirvana. So here, I want to point out to you, hell is plural. There's not only one hell, there's multiple hell for different degree of torturing. So he wants to save everybody. So the day that he will become Buddha, it's only he emptied the hell realm. Isn't that great? So some people wonder, why does he want to make such a great vow? I want to share with you a story. There is a reason behind every story or behind each vow. So the story goes on to, he was a Brahmin girl. Our soul does not have gender. But when we come into the human body, we can choose to become a girl or a boy. So in Siddhigarbha Bodhisattva's Buddha's previous life, he was once a girl. And this girl came from a Brahmin family. In other words, she come from a scholar family.
In her spare time, she often prayed to the enlightenment flower, serenity self, sovereignty king, Tathagata.
So even though she come from the Brahmin family, but her mother does not believe in Buddhism, and her father passed away in her young age. So her mother disallowed her to pray to Buddha statue or to pray to this particular Buddha. So she often tease her, sometimes slander Buddha, sometimes she will criticize the monk that goes around the village, say bad words. One day, the mother died. The girl, she was very sad. She was a teenager back then when her mom died. She sold most of her belongings and then made much offering to the temple because she wants to continue practicing her worship to this Buddha. During her praying, she understands that her mom is a sinful woman because during her mom's lifetime, she say many bad words. She slander Buddha. She cussed the monk going around to her village. So she worried that her mom will go to the hell realm. So she prayed many times to the Tathagata, where is my mom? And eventually, after many times of praying, her wish was fulfilled. So in her meditation, and the meditation was directed by Tathagata, the Buddha showed her how to contemplate. And then it was during her contemplation, the king of karmic sea talked to this Brahman girl. And then during their conversation, this king of karmic sea showed her the hell realm that people suffer so much in different way of torturing. So she was very sad. So in the end, she was really worried. She said, "Where's my mom? Where's my mom?" The king of karmic sea said, "Well, tell me your mom's name and your father's name." So as soon as she tell him that, the king said, "Well, this is what he said. Please do not be sad. 3 days ago, the sinful woman has already ascended to heaven. It's due to the virtuous filial offering." Meaning her, meaning the Brahmin girl. She prayed so much. She remember she sold most of her belonging and make much donation to the temple. And then she buy flowers, buy the incense to donate to the temple. And she also chant the sutra, do the mantra too. So the king of karmic sea tell her that not to get worried because the mom is already ascended to heaven because of her kind heart. So it was during that day or that moment, all the sinful beings in the hell are elevated just because of her virtuous good deed. Although initially she only wanted to save her mom, but she ended up saving everybody in the hell realm during that time, only during that time, because she personally witnessed the suffering in the hell realm. That's why she makes such a great vow. She made such a great vow that I will only become Buddha if the hell realm is empty. So here is the last slide of our session. Again, this is the intro part and this is the body. So the saint and the sage want to follow heaven and earth. They do not live for themselves. They live for all the sentient beings. That's why they can long live. So from there, we understand many saints and sages, they also long live too. This chapter should have inspired us. If we want to long live, if we want to endure long, we should follow the saints and sages' footsteps. If we place ourselves last, we will come first. If we position ourselves extraneously, we will be preserved. And that's how we can long live. So that's the end of my session. This is not an easy chapter to talk about, and I'm sure I only touched the surface of this chapter. I perhaps don't have the ability to deliver Lao Tzu's teaching, but it's through my sharing. I hope that we can all inspire each other, and if I make any mistake, please, you can send it to me or publicly in the Q&A session. So in our next chapter will be chapter 8, Be Like Water. If mistakes were made or said during today's sharing, I ask the forgiveness from the Heavenly Mother, Buddha Maitreya, Jigong Buddha, Sizun Simu, and Master. Thank you.